Hello everyone. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all distinguished guests who have been gathered here today at our event, Forging Comprehensive Aviation Ecosystem in Thailand, hosted by the Eastern Economic Corridor Office of Thailand, or the EEC office. This webinar will take approximately 2.5 hours. My name is Ingi Nichata, and it's my pleasure to be an MC today. I have to say that this is the event that will give you overall information about the Eastern Economic Corridor, U-Tapao International Airport, and this Aviation Technical Zone, or ATC, including policy, regulation, incentives, and infrastructure readiness. So first, let me walk you through our agenda today. We start off with the opening remarks given by Mr. Kanit Sangsupan, Secretary General of the Eastern Economic Corridor Office of Thailand, followed by Infrastructure Readiness at Eastern Economic Corridor by Mr. Chokchai Panyayong, Special Advisor, the Eastern Economic Corridor Office of Thailand, and Ms. Dachani Kongsiri Watana, Deputy Project Manager of U-Tapao International Airport Development Consultant. Business Opportunities for Aviation Industry Ecosystem in Thailand by Mr. Amartya Day, Associate Director, Aerospace and Defense of Frost & Sullivan. The roles of Civil Aviation Authority of Thailand in supporting aviation ecosystem by Mr. Saran Benjanirat, Deputy Director General of the Civil Aviation Authority of Thailand. Incentives and Industry Promotion Initiatives for 2022 and beyond by Mr. Chanin Khaochan, Deputy Secretary General of the Board of Investment of Thailand. Then we move on to the panel discussion on capturing potential demand of aerospace MRO in Thailand, which we are so delighted to have the panelists with us from U-Tapao International Airport, the Civil Aviation Authority of Thailand, Bangkok Airways Public Company Limited, and Thai Air Asia Company Limited. And at the end, we have spared some time for the Q&A. If you have any questions during this webinar, please send them using the Q&A feature. Our staff will be standby to gather all the questions for the last session Q&A. We also want to assure you that we will hide the sender's name. So without further ado, let's proceed with our agenda. I would like to invite Mr. Kanit Sangsupan, Secretary General of the Eastern Economic Corridor Office of Thailand, on stage to give us the opening remarks. Please welcome.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Nisha. We have here today Mr. Chokchai Panyayong, EC's Special Advisors and team, and we have the distinguished panelists today. Participants and ladies and gentlemen, on the behalf of the Eastern Economic Corridor Office of Thailand, or EEC office, it's giving me a great pleasure to welcome you to the first international market sounding events. The Forging Comprehensive Aviation Ecosystem in Thailand today is meant to be the kind of we listen to you forum on an essential parts to developments of aviation business at the eastern airport cities of U-Tapao Airport, which EC will co-development with the U-Tapao International Aviation Limited, or UTA, under our PPP agreement. We, the EEC, is a public agency managing to uplift the developments of the three provinces, namely Chha Cheong Sao, Chonburi, and Rayong. We encourage investment, uplift innovation, and advanced technology in the development process. We are at the business facilitators to private sectors that adds value across the entire project life cycle and coordinate closely and proactively with other public authorities to ensure that the success of the project. Our key mission in AEC are to accumulate and leverage the collective new technologies to generate more income and promote better quality of life, making EEC the area to be the best-in-class area-based development economically, socially, and advanced environmental solutions. Missions, another one is to bridge the gap of business practice at the national, regional, and at the provincial level. The last one is to promote the modernization of the new smart city development at the international standard. EEC primary goal is to position Thailand as the prime gateway to Asia as economic hub of ASEAN. The large-scale investment project in the EEC area comprise of the upgrading of our existing two deep sea port and international airport, as well as the construction of the new high-speed rail linking the three airports, are all committed to the PPP contract. Ladies and gentlemen, the technology transition has disrupted our ways of life and business practices. The EEC is moving ahead to prepare technologies and innovation platform to promote innovations and upgrading the modern technologies. The 12 target industries were adopted by EEC since the beginning of EEC, and the technology development begin to realize by business practices. That will certainly be the key components of the next generation and the future business needs. Aviation business is in the 12 target industry. Moreover, the location of the eastern airport cities, the U-Tapao airport, was and will be one of the best aviation logistic hub of Asia for the next booming modern air transportation in the futures. The EEC office has planned to develop the what's so-called Aviation Technical Zone, or ATC, in the Eastern Airport City U-Tapao project to lift the maintenance, repair, and overall what's so-called MRO to another level. Especially after the COVID, we are looking forward to uplift the ATC to another level of smart and modern to accommodate more change in the modern aviation business in the years to come. So to speak, we are not looking for the regular MRO, but we are looking for the next generation MRO to pave the ways to the development of the comprehensive aviation ecosystem in Thailand. The information we got today and the feedback from you on your size is really important to us to understand your needs such that we can design the development plan to meet with your needs and to serve well to our objective. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you for the opening remarks. Thank you so much, Mr. Kanit Sangsupan. Now we all know that EEC lies at the heart of Thailand 4.0 scheme. It initially focuses on the three eastern provinces, namely Rayong, Chonburi, and Chachoengsao. These play a role as a pilot comprehensive area development to uplift Thailand's competitiveness on global scale. We expect a significant transformation of both physical and social development in the technology and innovative industry. Next, let's stay updated with our upcoming speakers who will give you a brief idea and some details of how ready we are right now on infrastructure aspect for the EEC. We already sent the link to download the materials of this presentation in the chat box. Please join me in welcoming Special Advisor of the Eastern Economic Corridor Office of Thailand and former Senior Project Management Executive and Team Leader with an extended experience in aviation and tourism industry for over 35 years, expertise in both strategic planning and business development, and also large-scale airport construction project operation, Mr. Chokchai Panyayong. And please also welcome Ms. Dachani Kongsiritwathana, Deputy Project Manager of U-Tapao International Airport Development Consultant, on the stage.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking your time to participate in this event. I have been in the aviation sector for more than 30 years and have seen a lot of up and down within the industry. The COVID-19 pandemic has created one of the most detrimental impacts, not only to the economy, but also the behavior and the ecosystem in the aviation industry, which as a result accelerates the transformation of on-traveling activities. It is undeniable that Thailand, one, is the best and the most destination for the tourist industry. Before the pandemic, the air transport activities in Thailand has been steadily increasing. In 2019, air transport activities in Thailand reached up to 450,000 aircraft departures, while the 6 major airports in Thailand handled approximately 140 million passenger movements, as well as generated the MRO services consumption on local fleets worth $1.1 billion, while the aircraft maintenance, repair, and overhaul facilities and related services are inadequately served. So looking beyond and adapting to the new approach in the realities of the COVID-19, we believe there is a high potential for Thailand to have aviation technical support. This would be an appropriate time to prepare for the new facilities and technologies. Such the potential, the Thai government has specified aviation and logistics as one of the 12 targeted industries to be promoted in the national policy. Under the development of the Eastern Economic Corridor projects, one of the key infrastructure developments is the U-Tapao International Airport as a part of the Bangkok airport system. As shown on the slide, we position the EEC as the prime gateway to Asia due to its strategic location situated naturally in the center of Asia, with the various modes of the transportation including sea, air, road, and rail, connecting with 48 countries in Asia, which represent up to 60% of the world population in 2020. Thailand is one of the perfect positions to be an aviation hub. Next, let's focus on the infrastructure readiness in the EEC area. This is the overview of the connectivity of all infrastructure in the EEC area surrounding the U-Tapao International Airport. One of the key transportation networks that is vital to make U-Tapao Airport a success is the high-speed rail linking 3 airports, talking about Don Mueang Airport, Suvarnabhumi Airport, and U-Tapao Airport. With the high-speed rail, passenger can travel conveniently between Bangkok and U-Tapao Airport within 45 minutes commuting time. And other than that, there is a motorway number 7 connecting Bangkok throughout EEC area. With direct access into the U-Tapao Airport will take only 2 hours drive. To support the logistics and the multimodal transportation, EEC has been developing 2 major seaports, namely Lam Chabang Port as a main container port and Mataput Industrial Port for the LNG and liquid material. Moreover, to support the 12 targeted industries, including aviation, we also established 26 special promoted zones with a total industrial area of about 11,000 hectares, and within close proximities and only take less than 90 minutes from the U-Tapao Airport. The airport is not only surrounded by the mega infrastructures and industrial facilities, it is also situated very close to Thailand's well-known natural and livable cities, Pattaya and Rayong, the popular beaches and the family-friendly destinations. Last but not least, we also have already prepared 5G coverage in on EEC promoted zones to prepare IT, IoT serviceabilities on the stakeholders, which is also according to the Thailand 4.0 strategy. Here is a map showing on infrastructure project within the EEC area that I mentioned. Next, I would like to hand over to Ms. Dachani, our project engineer, for a closer look inside the U-Tapao International Airport. We can see the master plan. We can see how it's going in there, and the function. Please, Ms. Dachani.
Thank you, Mr. Chokchai, for a brief overview of the infrastructure readiness in the EEC area. As we all know that U-Tapao Airport has been well known internationally as a military base on more than 50 years. It had been operated by the Royal Thai Navy. Recently, in 2018, EEC Policy Committee has approved and announced an area of 10.4 square kilometers or 1,040 hectares to be a promoted zone, Eastern Airport City. Later on, the U-Tapao Airport PPP project award U-Tapao International Aviation Company Limited or UTA to be an airport operator concessionaire. We would like to share some of the key components in the development plan of UTA, which will be fully operated as a commercial airport, planning to start operation in 2025. First of all, let's review the existing U-Tapao Airport, which currently consists of the existing Royal Thai Navy passenger terminal, with the area of approximately 20,000 square meters, which can accommodate up to 3.7 million passengers per year. Runway 1 is a Code 4E standard runway, according to ICAO, with 60 meters in width and 3,505 meters in length, an airport that can accommodate up to 55 aircraft. As for UTA's development plan, ultimately in 50 years, the airport will be able to accommodate at maximum capacity of 60 million passengers per year. This airport will serve as a secondary airport in the Bangkok airport system, alongside Suvarnabhumi and Dongmueang Airport, while gradually accumulating demands during the 30-year period. According to the PPP contract, responsibilities can be divided into two parts: areas to be developed by public and developed by private parties. Let's start with components to be developed by UTA or private party. The first component is the new passenger terminal, which will have a total gross floor area of approximately 180,000 square meters, located on east of runway 2. There will also be satellite terminals in the midfield area. With this terminal altogether, the new U-Tapao Airport will be able to accommodate 15 million passengers per year in phase 1 in 2025, 30 million passengers per year in phase 2 in 2032, 45 million passengers per year in phase 3 in 2045, and 16 million passengers per year in phase 4, which is the ultimate phase is in 2058, with a total gross floor area of up to 460,000 square meters. Next is the ground transportation center, which will be located right in front of the new passenger terminal, also connecting with high-speed rail station here, linking Dongmueang, Suvarnabhumi, and U-Tapao with only 45-minute commuting time. There will also be cargo terminal and free zone that will be accommodating air freight and logistics in U-Tapao International Airport. And UTA will build an airport city, consists of commercial gateway, business centers, shopping malls, convention centers, and five-star hotels. All of these to be developed by UTA. Now, let's take a look at components that to be developed by the government. The first key component is runway 2 and related taxiway network. The runway 2 itself will be 16 meters wide and 3,505 meters long and able to accommodate wide-body Code F aircraft. The runway separation distance between runway 1 and runway 2 is 1,140 meters, which allow for simultaneous independent approaches. There will be 175 total aircraft stands for Code C equivalent aircraft. All of the runway and taxiway networks in the airport will be constructed by the Royal Thai Navy, who was assigned by Thai government. And once the construction is completed, they will all be handed over to UTA to manage and operate. The government is also responsible for constructing road network connecting motorway number 7, main roads and other local roads around the airport, along with the high-speed rail accessing directly into the airport. Another important component is the new air traffic control tower that will be managing air traffic for both runways by Aerothai. As for the airport utilities, it is located in the area responsible by EEC office, who is responsible to provide sufficient utilities to accommodate 60 million passengers per year in the ultimate phase. The electricity supply system comes from hybrid cogeneration power plant with capacity of 80 megawatts using gas turbine generator and steam turbine generator, and solar farm with capacity of 15 megawatts. UTA will be responsible for distributing 380-volt electricity to each land plot. For the water supply system, the highest capacity in the first phase is at approximately 20,000 cubic meters per day. There will also be water treatment system with international standard for airport wastewater management. And again, UTA will be responsible for distributing water supply to each land plot. Finally, there will be the into-plane services and airport depot for aviation fuel with 15 million liters at phase 1 and maximum capacity of 25 million liters. Now, let's focus on the Aviation Technical Zone or ATC. This area is also located in the area to be developed by EEC office to support and promote MRO and aviation-related activities in Thailand. With a total area of more than 320 hectares, EEC office will also be provide adequate utility system for all rentals in ATC. As for the MRO apron, ATC area can accommodate 17 Code E aircraft and 5 Code F aircraft, or 44 Code C equivalent. Finally, the key project timeline is shown on the screen. All of the key components of the airport is expected to start operation in 2025. The new terminal will be constructed by 2022, which runway 2 and taxiway networks shall also start construction by 2022. For the transportation infrastructure, including high-speed rail station and motorway number 7, the construction will also finish in time for the airport operating starting in 2022. Cut and fill work is currently ongoing in the ATC area and taxiway networks since December 2020. There were also some demolition works on the future runway and taxiway areas. Therefore, we are continuously making progress in construction to ensure everything goes accordingly to the project schedule, regardless of the pandemic situation. And that's a wrap for the U-Tapao International Airport and Eastern Airport City project. Hopefully, this will give you a brief overview of what you need to know about U-Tapao Airport. Thank you, and now back to Mr. Chokchai, please.
Thank you, Ms. Dachani, for the brief information on the U-Tapao International Airport. The airport project is progressing remarkably. The Aviation Technical Zone was reserved for the development of the MRO business activities and for supporting the U-Tapao International Airport and aviation industry as well. I would like to accentuate again that we are very pleased to receive recommendations in all areas, such as the provision of the incentives, supportive regulations, and human resource development directions for the aerospace business and infrastructure. This international market serving event, forking Comprehensive Aviation Ecosystem in Thailand, is organized to present the project development and understand the key success factor of the project. Your invaluable feedback in this event will help EEC office understand the requirement so as the arrange of the facilities and other supports toward your business expectation We truly hope that you will be interested in our project, and we look forward to welcoming you to sustainable ecosystem of the aerospace business in Thailand. So both of us, would like to thank all of you for attending. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chokchai Panyayong and Ms. Dashani Kongsiri Watana for keeping us updated with all the insight to develop a strong economic area or economic corridor besides the proper development of the infrastructure like seamless connectivity. We also need to focus on the technology side and other aspects concurrently. And as we all know, EEC aims to support aviation as one of the 12 targeted industries and will facilitate business operation as one-stop service. Now let's narrow it down to our aviation industry. We have with us on the stage Associate Director, Aerospace and Defense of Frost & Sullivan, Mr. Amartya Day, on the business opportunities for aviation industry ecosystem in Thailand. Again, the link to download the material of this presentation is in the chat box. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Amartya Day.
Thank you, Ms. Nisha, and good day to ladies and gentlemen. My name is Amartya. I'm part of Frost & Sullivan team. And today the intention is to put across the right knowledge and information for investors, MROs and airlines and supporting ecosystem to act on what are the privileges in the Eastern Economic Corridor, in U-Tapao Airport at the ATZ. But beyond that, what is the aerospace ecosystem that exists and that must be known for any investor to take a plunge and understand the overall ecosystem. So I would like to take you through this presentation on business opportunities for aviation ecosystem in Thailand. And we would be covering the MRO sector, the aerospace manufacturing, as well as the ground support equipment. But beyond that, we'll also have a look at the overall infrastructure, competitiveness of Thailand. So with that, I'll move to the very first slide, that these are the three main sections. One is the Thailand's aerospace perspective, then aerospace policy and competitive advantages, which are the privileges for this area to be developed further into an aviation hub. And finally, the Aviation Technical Zone, which is where all the action will begin. And it has already begun by now. So with that, I'll move to the next slide. So there are certain subsections within my presentation today, and definitely we couldn't be talking about aviation without talking about the impact of COVID-19 that it had on the industry in the last 2 years. We'll definitely touch upon the growth of air traffic and passengers in Thailand. We'll look at the fleet forecast, comparison, the key model and aircraft types, and we'll also look at the aircraft fleet projections. Who are the major players in terms of manufacturing MRO ground support equipment in Thailand? And then we are also looking at what is the current status? How much is Thailand producing in terms of services, in terms of equipment, in terms of manufacturing and products? And definitely we'll look into all the three segments, which is MRO, manufacturing and ground support equipment. And nevertheless, last but not the least, we'll also touch upon the human resources. So the very first part of the presentation is, yes, we all know that pandemic had a great impact on the aviation industry, but now the overall economy, the supporting industry, they are in revival mode. They have moved from the survival mode. And we need to know that whenever investors or MRO or airlines or the global aerospace industry is looking at the sector, they're always looking at competing ASEAN nations usually for their next investment, for their manufacturing, for their MRO, or for their support operations. And Thailand, I would say, has done reasonably well in terms of getting people fully vaccinated against COVID-19. And that's a very important criteria because many of the industry, many sub-verticals are looking into investments. Many of the stock markets are booming. So there's immense amount of investments also happening in the background. And all those investors need to know that what is a safe place for my employees, my staff, my overseas migrants as well, who will come and become part of the workforce. So this also gives a sense of stability. Earlier, we were talking about what are the economic parameters, but now it is beyond economic. We also need to know how the country has been resilient in terms of fighting against COVID-19. And that we see, this is quite a recent data. We see that in Thailand, almost 56% are doubly vaccinated. And if we compare with the remaining nations in the region, it is doing quite well. And just to touch upon the industry margins, now why? Of course, all the industry verticals were affected, but aviation is one of the verticals which has definitely got affected more, because airlines were always trading on a razor-sharp margin, on a razor-sharp net margin. And even if you look at the upstream, the manufacturing, it was also beyond 5 and 8%, barely maybe 10%. Certain tier 2 manufacturers were doing a little better, above in double digits. And MRO as an industry also runs on very razor-sharp margins. So it is important to know the overall health of the economy, the health of the staff, health of the society, and these are important parameters to set a business now. Now, how did we all fare? If I compare Thailand with the remaining nations in the region, we see that in the Q1 and Q2, number of passengers in millions is about 6.6 million and 4.3 million. So again, Thailand has done a reasonably good job, served almost 10.9 million passengers in the first 2 quarters of 2021. And that is by far quite good in terms of its other competitors. We'll move to the next one. Now, what we are showing here is mainly the forecasted registered carrier departures in Thailand. What has been the scenario from 2020, but all the way, what do we see as consulting organizations all the way up to 2030? So historical growth. So whenever I'm talking about aircraft departures, it is the total number of departures we are looking at, and that was close to 490,000, just short of 500,000 by end of 2019. And historical growth for Thailand was around a double-digit number, above 10%. Now, what has happened in pandemic? Almost all the nations globally plummeted to less than 50% of the departures, but many were even less, much less than 30%. So in that regard, we would say Thailand did reasonably well and was resilient. And we got numbers of around 250,000 aircraft movements. Now, going from 2020 all the way up to 2024 or 2025, this is what we expect. We have been observing the market forces. We are looking at the airline order, the options, how the various nations in ASEAN are reviving, and how the airlines are responding. Of course, some airlines have got a lot of support from the government. The rest haven't got same amount of support, but the overall economy is again coming back. So we saw something close to 215,000 aircraft movements in 2015, and already by 2021, we are witnessing close to 253,000 aircraft movements. Now, what we have done is we have divided the whole resurgence or the recovery in 2 phases. One is a recovery phase, and the other is a growth phase. So in recovery phase, we are expecting that the aircraft movements for entire Thailand will grow close to 500,000 back to 2019 levels by 2025. So that is a broad estimate, and our estimate is quite fine with other estimates in the industry, other airlines, and other consulting organizations. So I would say that's a very fair estimate, and we are not being too optimistic here. We are not being pessimistic either, but this is like a mid-market scenario. But by the time we reach around 2024, 2025, that is where we are already hitting the kind of aviation activity we witnessed in 2019, close to 500,000 of aircraft movements. And thereafter, our growth will come back to single-digit growth factor, and we will reach somewhere around 680,000 aircraft movements by 2030. Now, what you can see on the bottom of the screen is, sorry for that. What you can see at the bottom of the screen is we have put 3 different scenarios. The 3 scenarios are, so first of all, you can see historically, the total aircraft air passenger projection was around 70 million. Now, these are the unique passengers. Whenever we are counting in terms of airport, we are always counting in double. One is the embarking and one is the disembarking. So on many forecast numbers, you will see the total number of passengers are close to 140 million or 150 million. But here we are counting just a unique number of passengers. But in 2020, we had a similar plummeting down. And from here, we see that even if we don't get the similar recovery that was there in the yesteryears, still we will reach close to 107 million passengers by 2030. And that we are taking even a very modest approach of 6.4% growth year on year. And if we grow even anything closer to previous years up to 2019, which was 11.7%, and we grow even notch below a double-digit growth, we'll still reach around 136 million passengers. And bear in mind, this is 136 million unique passengers. So we should always double it up for total number of embarkation and disembarking. So if one way to talk about the total number of passenger movements, it will be double, that is 270 million. So we have definitely taken into account the impact of COVID. As you can see, the historical growth was quite steady, double digit. And even in the forecast, we are taking only the mid-market scenario, and still we'll need probably more airports. And that's what I'm going to talk about next. So a little bit on the aircraft numbers. So whenever we are talking about that, what is the kind of ecosystem? What are the kind of aircrafts? What is the kind of major aircraft families? And what is the ecosystem or the composition made of? So Thailand has a very healthy general aviation aircraft fleet actually, compared to other ASEAN nations. Close to 300 odd small aircrafts are there. So this is where you're talking about the Cessna and the Piper. And then we have a reasonable number of business jets as well. They are in double digit, and in some nations they are close to 20 or 30 to 40, but that is not an alarming factor at all. And in terms of rotorcraft, we have around 40 of those, and this is the stats that we have received in 2020. The large planes, and this is where all of us are interested, that how many aircraft commercial airliners are flying, and this is close to 288. In 2019, and this is a snapshot of 2020, and knowingly we gave this snapshot because you can see the impact of COVID that it had already, and this is still a healthy number. So we are still trading very close to 300. And in 2019, if I reckon, it was close to around 310 to 320 aircraft. So yes, some aircraft did not come back in the fleet. We have sold few of them, but still it's a very healthy number. Now, if I look at the small plane category, general aviation, that's around 47%. Your business jets is around 6%, and the large jet planes is around your 50%, close to 50% of the fleet. At the bottom of the screen, what we have done is we have split up broadly in terms of the OEMs, because that's what investors and all the supporting ecosystem wants to know. So Thailand is I would say, more of a Airbus territory, but it still has a very healthy number of Boeing wide body and narrow body jets. There's a bit of ATR aircraft, which is a turbopropeller fleet. But going ahead by 2030, you can see that already the Airbus narrow body fleet is bulging. And that is where, and this is mostly the A320, A321. So it is mainly the A320 family. And then you have the Boeing narrow body, which is the Boeing 737 and the Boeing 737 MAX. These are the two variants of that. So from a MRO point of view, you already know what kind of aircraft fleet is swelling up. And this we have painted this picture taking into account the impact of the pandemic, but we have also taken into account the impact of the various airline orders, options, and how they are bringing them back to the fleet. We also want to know that is it more of a low-cost carrier territory, or a full-service carrier territory? So just at the onset of pandemic, we had around 145 aircraft registered with the full-service carriers. And by full-service carriers, we mean the Thai Airways, we mean the Bangkok Airways, Thai Smile, And the low-cost carriers are your AirAsia, Vietjet, so on and so forth. Cargo airline is mainly the K-Mile Asia. But going ahead in 2030, we see that the low-cost areas, low-cost aircraft will really increase more than double, close to 354 of those, whereas the wide-body jets, mainly with the full-service carriers, will definitely increase close to 194. But we also expect that the cargo airline K-Mile Air is going to have around 27 aircraft. So overall, it's a very healthy growth in the next 10 years. And low-cost carriers is where we should be looking at. So that is mainly your Thai Vietjet and Thai AirAsia and Thailand Air as well. And a lot more international flights, they have already opened between Europe, Japan, Australia. With Thai AirAsia has resumed its Dubai flights as of November. So many of the markets have already opened up in this segment. Now, airlines, yes, they are the closest, I would say, the downstream end of the market. They are the closest to the customer, but there is an entire engine behind them as we go. And that is what we call as aerospace or the overall aviation ecosystem. So we have quite a few players. Interestingly, in Thailand, we have aerospace manufacturers which are supporting the OEMs such as Airbus or Boeing or Embraer or Bombardiers. And those are, there are quite a few good players such as Safran, Chrome Alloy, Aeroworks, Senior Aerospace, Lycrace, Mini BA. So there are quite a few players out there. And there are limited local cargo players in terms of end users and no major local leasing companies. There is a leasing presence, of course. And the end customers are the airline customers. So this is where we are seeing your Thai, North Air, Vietjet, Thailand, Bangkok Air, Smile, and AirAsia. And in terms of the maintenance, repair, and overall, which is one of the key thrust areas for today's discussion, is there are few players. Thai Airways, of course, has a large number of staff in the MRO. And then there is TI, there is Triumph Aviation, Revima, and few other players. But one of the small segments that UTapao or the Eastern Economic Corridor is also looking is at the ground support equipment. So we should not completely lose focus. And there are a few companies such as Panas, Sinfonia, which are doing reasonable number of catering to airport ground handling vehicles. And in terms of ground support providers, there's AOTGA, which is an airport affiliated ground support service provider. There's third-party players such as banks and ASL, and there is airline affiliated, of course, BFS and DGGS. So that kind of paints the overall picture of aviation ecosystem in Thailand. Now, we definitely want to know what is the kind of manufacturing and how does Thailand stand in terms of comparison against other ASEAN nations. So Thailand, you can see on the extreme end that Thailand overall aerospace manufacturing is close to around 0.4 billion. So that's 400 million US dollars. And we expect it to grow by 2030 to close to 800 million US dollars. So by no means, it is definitely a healthy number. It may not be as strong as Singapore, but you can see many nations are in that region. And in terms of import and export, so that is where we are looking at the OEM trade balance. Thailand has net import is around 349 million, but it is a net positive. So the balance of trade is positive. So bear in mind, we are not counting the aircraft purchase and the aircraft sale. So whenever you look at that number, that really inflates it. We are taking away the aircraft purchase and the aircraft sale. So this is the real value of manufacturing that is happening in Thailand, which is again going back to the integrators. And in 2019, it was close to 670 million. Of course, it will plummet because as aircraft are churned out at a slow rate by Airbus and Boeing mainly, all the supporting suppliers also have to reduce their rates. But many of them also reduce rates because of the lockdowns, because staff cannot reach the factories, and there were compulsory lockdowns on health grounds and safety. So overall industry almost went down by 50%, but we expect it to again go to 2024, by 2024, 2025 to 2019 levels. So this is the total amount of manufacturing, aerospace manufacturing that is happening in Thailand. I'll take you to the next slide. Now this is MRO spending. By MRO spending, what we mean is this is the total amount of money that is being spent by Thailand registered aircraft. So again, on the extreme end, you can see Thailand, and we were spending, this is the 2020 numbers, so you see a bit low, close to 0.6 billion, converting is around 600 million US dollars. But this used to be a lot more. If you see on the bottom left, almost over $1 billion, 1.19. So close to $1,190 million worth of MRO services were being procured by Thailand registered aircraft, which means Thailand is a huge market. And not everything was being produced in Thailand. Of course, Thai Airways has a large MRO facility. Bangkok Airways does have, but beyond that, there was no staff, no third-party MRO services. So which means Thailand is a huge market, and there's a huge need for MRO services, and there it could be a huge potential for any third-party MRO to grow in this market. And we are expecting it will reach back to 1.94, close to $2 billion worth of market by 2030. So that's where, again, the recovery is expected to grow in a double digit and further growth in a single digit. But nevertheless, it's a reasonable market. Right now in 2020, the supply is half of around 288 million. But in previous years, it used to be almost double. Mainly the MRO services were coming from Thai Airways and Bangkok Airways. I'll go to the next slide. Ground support equipment, you would have noticed I've changed the billion to the million, but it nevertheless says it's an important and growing segment. So we are producing close to 69.8 million we expect by 2030. Right now, due to pandemic, the overall production is less, but ground support equipment is an important vertical within aerospace manufacturing. So more the number of aircraft movements, more is the ground support services, and more the services, you need more amount of ground support equipment. So this is where we are talking about the baggage dollies, the tractors, the catering trucks, these kind of equipment. And as I mentioned before, there are local companies such as Panas, Sinfonia, which provide these kind of equipment. So this is growing, it's a growing market, and definitely there would be provision in the Eastern Economic Corridor for further growth in ATZ. I'll move to the next one. We always have to focus on the manpower, and we did work with a couple of these universities as well in the past as a consulting organization. And Thailand has a very healthy number of aerospace engineering college and colleges that provide both degrees and diploma programs. And of course, in the midst of that, you can see CATC, which is Civil Aviation Training Center, and they are one of the most important players. But beyond that, we also have Kasetsat University, Chulalongkorn University, who provide many aviation management courses or aviation technical degree courses. And this is being supported, this entire ecosystem is being supported very well by Civil Aviation Authority of Thailand, Eastern Economic Corridor, Department of Airports, and the Ministry of Transport itself. If you look to the right top, you will see this is a forecast by CAT, and by 2017 itself, we had an industry demand of close to 15,900 people. And this does not include all the stuff. It is mainly of MRO, manufacturing, and the supporting stuff. And right on the bottom, you can see how much is Thailand churning out in terms of qualified students in only aircraft maintenance programs. So there is no dearth of qualified people in Thailand. Of course, they have to go through the on-job training and requisite certifications, but close to 900 to 1,000 students are churned out every year. And this is a forecast all the way up to 2024. One of the important developments is the Civil Aviation Training Center in U-Tapao. So we are definitely looking at an upcoming center, and we expect it to be operational by 2027. A couple of degrees that CATC will provide is a master's degree in aviation management, which is definitely required, and undergrad and certificate courses. Now, aeronautical sciences, aeronautical electronics engineering, these are really required in terms of your avionics and so forth. And then again, ground engineering, avionics, aircraft and aerospace technology. These are well-developed courses that are highly in demand by the industry. All the training standards are as per ICAO or Air Traffic Control Training Organization, NTO, and flight training organizations. So a number of different courses will be provided, and they're in line with the training standards. The most important, I would say, important development right at the bottom, you can see the certification is underway, and the Part 147 as per EASA training organization standards, that is very important for the industry to cater to the needs. And EASA training standardization means we are at the global level, at par with global level. So two of these courses for ground technicians and also for aircraft maintenance license, both will be provided by CATC. And they want to do it as a regional center of excellence. I'll quickly go through the competitive advantages. Khun Chokchai has already spoken about it, and it will also be spoken by BOI and Civil Aviation Authority of Thailand. So I'll just spend a little bit of time on that. But beyond that, U-Tapao and ATZ has a wonderful connectivity. We have talked about the railway links. We have talked about the airport's proximity to two important ports. So it is at an excellent position. And once the high-speed railway is operational, we can expect the journey between Suvarnabhumi Airport and U-Tapao Airport to be less than an hour. And that will cater to the Bangkok area in terms of for a third airport for Bangkok area to serve the passengers. We have other advantages. Of course, many of these advantages have been brought not only by BOI, but also by supporting organizations to put together. So the work permit processing times, they've really achieved a very quick one over here. Then smart visas, and this is across 13 different verticals, and aviation and logistics is one of them. Foreign currency trading is many times required for MRO to trade parts and consumables, and then international business center. So this is a privilege if for income tax rates for 8, 5, and 3% whenever overseas companies want to set up an international business center in the BOI areas. So a number of incentives and privileges are being provided by BOI and supporting organizations to develop this area further. Now, a little bit I want to talk about that many of these things, I would reckon that in the last 4 to 5 years, while we were working with various organizations and key airlines in Thailand, and also Civil Aviation Authority and Eastern Economic Corridor, we have understood that many of these enablers need to work out for successful investment and successful operations. And it is to our great satisfaction that many of those advices have been taken on board, and multiple organizations are working together. So increasing the proportion of foreign investment, reducing the process for spare parts equipment for importing process, or improving the tariffs for spare parts and equipment. One important one is a mutual acceptance. What it means is if the Civil Aviation Authority of respective nations can accept your approvals, then the same MRO organization doesn't have to go for multiple approvals. So they don't have to spend ample amount of time in acquiring this. At the same time, investment privileges such as improving the investment and giving more tax benefits as well as non-tax benefits. Those are very critical when we are competing amongst the ASEAN nations. And yes, there is a definite need for free tax zone or free economic zone, as we call it. That is also something being worked upon. And definitely the regulations in terms of repair station, that earlier there were certain issues, and that is being worked on, that we don't have to restrict ourselves to only aircraft being flown in Thailand, but it can be beyond that as well. Quickly on the airport capacity perspective, the layout plans and the business model. So this is a very important chart, I would say. We wanted to show to the audience that already by 2015, the total demand had outstripped the capacity. So the capacity for Bangkok, which means Suvarnabhumi and Don Mueang Airport together, was around 75 million. And that was already surpassed by the demand of 83 million in 2015. And that was increasing. So there was more traffic congestion, more passenger congestion, and until 2019 when pandemic happened, and we are back with the capacity. But we do need, as and when the market is now opening up. So this is a very imminent need that we do need. Not only the BKK expansion, Don Mueang expansion, we'll have a new Bangkok new terminal. But despite doing all these, and that's the most important factor here, that even if we have all these three terminal expansions, still by 2025, the demand will again outstrip the capacity, and definitely the demand will grow much more than the capacity by 2030. And by 2034, we know the total capacity of Suvarnabhumi and Don Mueang is 160 million, and the demand is going to be 228 million. So we do need a third airport, which is in the vicinity, and U-Tapao Airport does satisfy that condition. So if we can move passengers within an hour, and which is very much the situation in South Korea, in Incheon and Gimpo, then similar situation in Narita in Japan. So always there is a city airport, which we do have in Don Mueang and Suvarnabhumi. But if we can create one more airport capacity in a 1 hour radius, that can really satisfy the capacity that we need in Bangkok area. So that does paint the picture, at least for airport perspective. Quickly going to the ATZ. Now this is a wonderful plan that has been created by Eastern Economic Corridor, being supported by a number of other agencies and U-Tapao International Airport. So we are talking about second runway, and the second runway will open up the capacity up to 60 million passengers. And not only that, we are having a new airport, what we are calling as Aviation Technical Zone. Now this Aviation Technical Zone is a large area, 170 hectares. So just ballpark, it's a huge area. It can accommodate probably 20 hangars, I would say, of different sizes, of course, wide body and narrow body. But what are the outstanding or most benefiting infrastructure availability or facilities here? I would say the very first is that ECO is preparing the apron. The apron, the second runway, the taxiways, they'll all be connected. So it's not a greenfield development. It is I would say, aviation ecosystem ready development. There are a number of zones such as MRO Zone 1, MRO Zone 2. There's an aircraft washing facility that will be created. At the same time, there's parking, enough parking and service road for the staff, employees, for the car movements. And the utility and aviation fuel zone is also a very important feature, because this also will be created as part of the development. We are also keeping an area of the aviation support equipment that is on other side of towards the runway, and wherever when we have support equipment that can be maintained, that's the area for that. And for training center and supporting facility for CATC or other third-party training providers, there's a dedicated area. So I would say it is a overall very comprehensive plan in terms of MRO zone, support equipment zone, utilities, apron and taxiways all done, and utility and aviation zone. So this does paint a picture of a very comprehensive plan. And we are expecting, I have some milestones as well. So we are expecting the Aviation Technical Zone to be opened by 2025, and the airport, these are the couple of milestones. So U-Tapao Airport, new terminal that is being worked upon, the land handover in 2021. The environmental study assessment that is also underway. The tendering is going to be early 2022. The design and construction of the Bangkok U-Tapao Road is underway, and land acquisition and tendering all is going to happen in early 2022. But much of it is also underway right now. It is happening. So the tendering process is expected next year in 2022, which we're very close to, and the construction in the next 2 years. So by 2025, we'll have a fully ready aviation technical zone, which does limit that this is the right time to take the investment decision in terms of bring the MRO investments and the manufacturing investments. This is a key problem that was always there in terms of the special economic promotion zones, and ECO has, in ECO, the most striking thing is you don't have to go through the PPP. And as you know, in Thailand, for the PPP, it's a very complicated process. It's a time-taking process, and which other industry incumbents definitely have looked into. Other overseas investors have also looked into the PPP process. And so anything in EC does not have to comply with PPP. And that's one of the most striking advantages. So there can be lease out, sublease out, and we can get a rental for 30 years. And again, it can be renewed. So that is something which can reduce the time to market or the go-to-market strategy, and we can really reduce the investment time horizon. The second part, which just talk a little bit about the rental scheme, is that the land rental rate will be 3% of the property value, and the increases will be made by 9% every 3 years. If you compare these values with other ASEAN nations, the benefit arrangement fee is around 1%. So I would say, compared to many ASEAN nations, it's a very reasonable number, at least in terms of the plan, what it looks right now. And revenue sharing will be considered later as per EC policy committee recommendations. So this is the overall value proposition for the facility in terms of rental. And yes, PPP is public-private partnership is not required here. And straight away, you have a land-ready, investment-ready facility. So that's about it. Thank you so much. And we'll definitely take questions at the end of the presentation after the panel discussions. So please keep posting your questions. Thank you. Back to you, Kurnisha.
It was an amazing, informative, and insightful presentation. Thank you, Mr. Amartya Day, for sharing with us the trend of aviation industry at the global level, regional level, as well as the opportunities for aerospace business in Thailand. The supply of MRO services is still inadequate in comparison with the rising demand for air transport in Thailand. So there is a huge potential to develop U-Tapao International Airport into regional MRO hub. Next, we have Mr. Saran Benjatnirat, Deputy Director General of the Civil Aviation Authority of Thailand, who will give a presentation on the roles of Civil Aviation Authority of Thailand in supporting aviation ecosystem. As we all know, the Civil Aviation Authority of Thailand plays an important role in supporting all the businesses in the industry. So today he will update on the roles of the Civil Aviation Authority of Thailand, or CAAT, in paving towards sustainable growth of Thai aviation. This will give you the framework of how would CAAT support the industry and the new policy that will help all the businesses during this time. There's a link in the chat box to download all materials of this presentation. Our next speaker, Mr. Saran Benjatnirat.
Okay ครับ สวัสดีครับ Today I'm going to discuss about the role of Civil Aviation Authority of Thailand in support of aviation ecosystem. As you know, CAT is the regulator, but of course we also one of the promoter for civil aviation ecosystem in Thailand as well. And today what I'm going to discuss is about what are we going to do from now on till the recovery of the ecosystem of civil aviation in Thailand, and after that, some detail of the things that we plan to do in the future. For now, we are going to discuss about the situation and challenge that we have. As you can see, it is not deniable that the COVID pandemic is something that hit hard on civil aviation all around the world. And from the graph, you can see that we have the number of a big dip in the GDP compared to the economics. You can see that the green one on the top left is the GDP of Thailand. That's the percentage of the growth. And once we can also see that once the COVID hit, which is pretty much at the early of 2020s, we can see the dip in the GDP of the countries. But we can also see that we have a very big dip in terms of the GDP on the air transport. But we can also notice from the graph that we can recover a little bit, and things get much better start from quarter two of 2021. And on the international tourists, we can see the number that at first in 2019 or 2562, the number is actually in quite a good health. But after that, we pretty much closed the countries, and the tourists that arrived reduced to almost zero in the middle of last year. But now it's recovered around 20,000 tourists arrive in Thailand every day. And with this, we can see that for Thai aviations, we have economic sensitivities, which means if the economics going down, the aviation industry is also coming down as well. This seems to be pretty much happens everywhere around the world. And we also, for Thailand, we also have something that is unique, which is the dependency of international tourism. And in the past, we also have the limitation on basic infrastructure, which limits the number of tourism that arrive in Thailand, and also limits the number of the flight that can happen in the countries every day. With this, we also have the new normal after the COVID. We have to cope with that. And then with the COVID, we can also see that some of airlines do have some strength to go through the COVID situation and survive. And with that, during this time, we also have to make sure that the manpower is ready when the recovery comes back. And this is something that we are looking into as a challenge for the recovery. When we look into the passengers, well, in the last year and also this year, for this graph, we can see the number of passengers this year. And in January, February, we just recovered from the first wave. And you can see that the number of the passengers, especially the domestic one, can grow rapidly. But after that, we were hit by another wave in April that caused the number to go down in May. It recovered a little bit in June, but well, eventually the COVID was getting worse. And after that, we have to close down everything in August. But after that, we can see the number is going up. And at the moment, even the graph doesn't show, I can say that the number of the domestic passengers can go up to something close to the number in March, that we have at the moment. About the aircraft movement, well, it is pretty much going very much the same as the number of the passengers. We can see that the number of the flights going up in March and April. This is because we just recovered from the first wave, and in April we do have a very long holiday for Thai, so that the number of the movement is quite high at that point. But after that, it's come down to be something very low in August, and then it's come back again in September. And in this December, I can expect that the number will be up to something close to March and April this year. The other one that I have to say is the number of the air freight and the cargo. Well, Thailand seems to have some steady number of the number of the cargos and the freight. Mostly we do have the cargo, the freight service only from international, but not domestic. This is because for domestic, we do have another infrastructure, which is the road, which is very good. And we can pretty much send everything in Thailand within just one day. But for international, the cargo service from the aircraft seems to be something pretty steady. Even with COVID, we don't have any impact. You can see that the number is quite steady, and even it get even better. I say, for example, in March, it can go up 20%, and then even it come down a little bit. It's still better than in January and February. And this number is steadily grow a little bit for the air freight and cargo. So for this number, we can say that the cargo seems to be something that is quite the way to go for now. Well, with that, we can see that, hey, there is something that we're supposed to do during this time for recovery. And with the COVID, we can say that it is not a bad thing completely. We can also see something that at the moment, we can set something new and make sure that we will not get the same problem when we will go back to the normal situations again. And with that, CAT work with the other stakeholder in the industry, like the airline, the airport, and also other operators, so that we can come back to the normals again without the problems. With this, we are looking into some other countries. For the foreign country, for the internationals, we look at ICAO. ICAO do have the guidance for economics and finance measure in order to support the airline and the industry as a whole. And they look into the financial support, regulatory support, and so-called the support on state oversight. And they also set up the so-called the CART, C-A-R-T, take-off guide. This one is to ensure that we can continue working with the transport during the COVID. And this one is the things that we got from ICAO. And in Thailand, we also have some guidance from Office of National Economic and Social Development Council. And with this plan, it is the strategy of the nations to cover to counter the COVID situations for 2 years. And this one is pretty much looking at the developments of human resource and also keep the basis of the economics to be possible to stay. And even we can prepare for the future growth. This is pretty much by having the balance in the system in order to cover with the COVID. Well, we also look into the other countries, and in several countries, we can see that people are looking into several measures in order to support the airline to survive. Say, for example, in Singapore, they do have the wage subsidy and guarantee. And in Australia, they do have the operating subsidiaries for route specific. In US, pretty much the same thing. They put the money into the airline in order to make it survive. And in France, people they also put the government provide a loan for the airlines. Other than that, they also have something to help in terms of the regulations. Most of the country do have the so-called the temporary suspension of airport, so-called the slot, so that the airline can fly pretty much freely so that they can have the chance to survive. So that we also have pretty much the same thing in Thailand. On the financial side, we talk with other stakeholders, for example, the airport, in order to extend the period of parking and landing charge to reduce these parking and landing charge. We also have the exempt of the parking and landing charge in some airport. And then in others service like air navigation service, we also extend the credit terms. And we also, for CAT itself, we also extend the credit term for international arrival and departure fee. And about the excise tax, we also ask the government to extend that period of the reductions. And this one is also, this one is the financial support that we have for the airlines. For the regulatory support, we have the exemption of the rule and regulation for aircraft passengers cabins. We enable them to, we let them transport cargo in the cabin, which is something that is a very success in the past. And we also cancel the historical grandfather right for the scheduled slot. And we also extend the validity of support for licensing and certification document for some case, for example, the pilot and also some air crew. Those are the measures that we ensure that the airline can survive in the near future. And then we look into the roadmaps that we will help build up the aviation industry in Thailand again. And again, as I mentioned before, we just want to ensure that the problem in the past will not happen again when we come back to new normals. Well, in 2064 or 2021, well, we look into some 7 dimensions of development. The first one is the basic infrastructures. At the moment, before the COVID, we have some problem with the airport that is very congested. And at the moment, we cooperate with the airport and they set up the plan to build up their capacity. You can see that, for example, in Suvarnabhumi, they are working on the 3rd runway. And Don Mueang, they are working on the new terminals. And again, the second one is about public health corridor. This one is to set up the new normal for transportations in the air transport. And in this case, we just want to ensure that even COVID is going to stay with us for a long period of time, we will have something to encounter it and make sure that the transportation is going to come back to normal. Then we strengthen the operators. Well, this one we talk with the creditor, ask them to help the airlines and others operators to survive with the soft loan. For rule and regulations, during the COVID-19, we reduce some requirements in the rule and regulations to ensure that all the aircraft and all the airlines can fly with less burdens on the regulation, but it's still within the standard. For CAT itself, we do have some system that will help to support the CAT so we can survive that, and we also have some measure on our side as well. And for standard maintenance, and in this case, we just to make sure that we have everything in place to ensure that the standard is maintained. And the last thing is pretty much the same. We just want to keep the readiness of our pilot and air crew to ready for the recovery of the aviation system. For the quick win, again, we look into improve the basic infrastructure to ensure that the infrastructure is going to be in good shape. And then we also build the public health corridor that make sure that is going to be connect to the other countries next to us so that it is going to be much more seamless. And then we have to maintain the air transport service during the pandemic. And we continue to support the operator and also support CAT. And then we also prepare for the readiness of the air transport when the COVID is gone and the transport is coming back. And the last one is to ensure the continuity of air transport. And then we also have the plan that will continue later. This is pretty much the recovery plan that we have for the COVID. And then during this time, we also have a chance to ask people from MRO and OEM on what they want. The first one is that they look into the tariff of the spare parts and equipment. Well, for Thailand, as you know, we are not the owner of technologies, but we might have to import something in order to import the spare part and some equipment in order to work on the MRO or OEM parts, so that we are going to talk with the other organizations, cooperate with them to make sure that the tariff is going to be in the good number. Another one is that we are going to reduce the process to import parts and spare parts. Then we are looking into the regulations to make sure that the aircraft that can be repaired is going to if they want to insert the new type of aircraft into the capacity, it's going to be not so difficult. And then we're also looking into make sure that we have the mutual acceptance of the standard from foreign licensed organizations. The next thing is that as the OEM and MRO, most of the parts are come and go. It means it has to be import and export, because in Thailand, around only 30% is the things that we repair locally, but another around 70%, it has to be from the other operator from overseas. So that establishment of the free zone to reduce import tax is one thing that we have to coordinate with other organizations as well. And then in the past 5 years, we also make some change in the Air Navigation Act to improve the investment privilege to attract the investor. At the moment, for the small repair stations, the privilege goes, the ownership can be 100% for the foreigners. And we also reduce the limitations on the management. Now it can be more on the foreigner side as well. And then, yes, and this one, we also increase the proportion of foreign investment. Those are the things that we got the requirement from the operator, and some of them we have already make it happen. And the other one that is very important, it is about the the change in the regulations. We just want to make sure that, well, our regulation is going to be recognized by the other countries. To do that, well, we have to change the structure of the regulations. In this case, we look into the structure that is going to be comply with ICAO standard. And in this case, we are looking into the system that used by both FAA and EASA. For example, we have already made one big change in the repair station, which is the so-called Part 145. Part 145 is for repair stations, and we made some change in the structure to ensure that we can compare that to both FAA and EASA, the big guys in this business. And we also make some training for the inspector, both theoretical trainings and also on the job trainings, in order to adopt these new regulations and also be able to comply with FAA and EASA. We also set up the program, the software called MPIC. This one is the program for control or manage the oversized activities that is going to comply with the new regulations. And then we are talking with other Thai aviation industry and also ICAO and Europeans to ensure that we are in compliance with them. And at the end, which I hope that it will be in the next few years, that we can start negotiating with other authorities to ensure that they can accept our safety standard and that we can have the so-called bilateral aviation safety agreements. This is the things that we are setting up for the futures, and that will benefit the people, that will benefit the investor that come to Thailand. And again, for the regulations, we are going to make it very much easier to understand. This is going to be made by the so-called, make the so-called accepted mean of compliance, or AMC. This one is going to be the thing that will explain what is the regulation means and how the operator can achieve it. And then we also make the so-called guidance materials that will help to guide the people how to make the system, the regulation to be realized. And this one, we have already worked on the so-called personal licensing and training organizations, set it up as TCAR 1. This one is for pilot, cabin crew, and maintenance engineers. Then we also working on the so-called TCAR 6, which is for the flight operator. This one is used for the commercial flight and non-commercial air transport. And then we are working on TCAR 8, that is for design, productions, maintenance of the aircraft. And then TCAR 110, that is for air navigation service. On the airport, we are working on TCAR 14, that is for the design and operation of the airport. Those TCAR are the things that are the regulation that we are working on at the moment to make sure that they are going to comply with ICAO standard and also comply with the other authorities. Those are already in place, so that this is the things that we have done. That is all from my side. Thank you very much. ขอบคุณครับ
Thank you, Mr. Saran Benjanirat. We are not only located in an advantageous location, but also that we possess a wealth of expertise in this industry that make Thailand considered as one of the excellent manufacturing base. The new policy already makes it even better. And as I said before, we would have the incentive and promotion initiative to offer to. Let's cover the last topic with the next presentation, Incentives and Industry Promotion Initiative for 2022 and beyond, which aims to advance EEC into Gateway of Asia for aerospace manufacturing and MRO activities. There is a link in the chat box to download all materials of this presentation. Now please join me in welcoming Mr. Chanin Khaochan, Deputy Secretary General of the Board of Investment of Thailand.
Thank you. Good day, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chanin Khaochan. I am the Deputy Secretary General of Thailand Board of Investment. I have the responsibility to promote aviation industry. So today, as my topic, I will talk about incentive, how the board investment can provide to the investor. So first of all, let me introduce a little bit about my office, the Thailand Board of Investment. We are the government agency under the Office of the Prime Minister. We provide comprehensive information and advice on establishing the operation in Thailand to support the investor who would like to come to invest and do business in Thailand. We are the agency who can grant the investment tax, the tax incentive and non-tax incentive to investor, and we are also acting as the coordinator to coordinate between the foreign business community and other public agency in Thailand to remove the business difficulty in Thailand and also create better ecosystem for business in Thailand. And we provide business support service for investors who come to invest in Thailand. Now come to see about the incentive, that what kind of incentive we provide to the investor. So actually for the investment in Thailand, we provide incentive for aerospace, and all aerospace value chain include the manufacturing, repair, maintenance, and also other service like air transport service and training service center and scientific lab. And also other about supporting industry that doing business with the aerospace industry, like a machining, tooling or test equipment. But anyhow, today I will concentrate on the manufacturing of aircraft and parts and also MRO. So what we do, or what kind of incentive we provide? So for the aircraft manufacturing and aircraft critical parts manufacturing, we provide the maximum incentive that we can provide at 8-year corporate tax exemption and no cap. No cap is mean how much of your tax will you pay. We will exempt for you all 8 years that you have the profits. And for repair and maintenance and overhaul and also repair for the part of the aircraft, we provide corporate tax incentive exemption 8 years. And for the one who will do business on manufacturing of onboard device and equipment like a chair or other interior for the aircraft and also the equipment for using in the aircraft, we provide 5-year corporate tax incentive tax exemption. But if you do only repair onboard device and equipment, we provide you 3-year corporate tax incentive exemption. This is the summary that all related that I just mentioned, that what we provide incentive to you. Anyhow, if you are in the EEC area, you will get the additional incentive, like in the category of the product that under the A1 and A2, you will get the additional 50% reduction for 2 years. But if you are in the decided location like EEC in Aviation Technical Zone, something like that, and if you are in industrial estate area in EEC but not the design area, you can get additional corporate tax exemption 1 year. And apart from that, if you do SRD, human resource development, altogether with the academy, you will get the additional tax exemption reduction 50% for 3 years. This is the condition that if you would like to do human resource development, that you have to cooperate with the some academic institution to do this training, and you have to do training for your staff at least 10% of total number of your staff that you will have in a project, and you can join the project of the government academic that they already prepare for you to join this program. And we also have the additional program that if you can getting more additional CIT exemption, if you do you have the investment on the R&D or human resource training or local supplier development and product development. If you have this expend on this in the proposal, what we want, like if you have all this expend 1% compared to the first 3 years of your sale, that you can get additional 1 year tax exemption. If you have this expend 2% of the total sale in the first 3 years, you can get additional tax exemption 2 years like this. But if you have only R&D expense, you can get additional incentive up to 5 years. And also, we will change the system to exempt the tax for you. Normally, for the A2, A3, and A4, you will get corporate tax exemption, but the tax you will get exemption will get not more than the total investment you put in the project. But with this scheme, you can relieve the tax ceiling. So that means in each year you get tax exemption, all the tax you need to get the exemption every year if you are in this scheme. And you can get up to 5 years, but not more than 13 years totally. As I mentioned that the maximum incentive I will provide for this category is 8 years. So you can get additional 5 years. That means totally 13 years. So not more than our regulation you can do. And apart from the incentive we provide to you, the BOI also provide the service to make the investor getting more convenient. So one of the important thing for you, for your industry in the EEC is the smart visa. This visa is different from the normal visa. We can provide you maximum 4-year visa in one time. And this visa no need the work permit. So this visa already be work permit. So no need to go to the benefit to get the additional work permit again. So it will reduce your time to get on everything to work in the Thailand. And your spouse, your children who follow you to Thailand also get the same visa. That means their visa already include the work permit. They can do the job. But normally the expat who come to Thailand to get the work permit in Thailand, their spouse cannot do the job in Thailand. But smart visa is the exemption case. And we also relax other thing that make you more easy to do something, do business in Thailand. And we also have what we call the build unit that would support you to link to local supplier. So with the program of the build unit in BOI, they will organize the activity for you to meet with the local supplier. And we also have the Subcon Thailand at the exhibition that you can look around in the exhibition to looking for your supplier from Thailand as well. So this is what the Thailand Board of Investment can offer to the investor who coming to invest in the aviation industry. So I hope that if you have any idea that you would like to ask us to improve something that to have the better attractive for you to come to Thailand, please do not hesitate to contact us. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for sharing with us, Mr. Chanin Khaojan. This is so far one of the most interesting presentation of this webinar. We ensure that investors in the EEC receive the best incentive packages. We offer a standard tax package with additional tax incentive for some programs and additional privileges. Our team can advise and accompany you throughout this wonderful, innovative, and lucrative journey. All the speakers have given us the background information, the framework of the growth of Thai aviation and all these insights, how the policy will support us and how ready we are to grab the business opportunity in a dynamic situation like now. Next session, the panelists will share with all of us on the topic capturing potential demand of aerospace MRO in Thailand. This panel will help all of us to identify the potential demand for MRO services to support key airlines serving Thailand's domestic and international airline operation. As local MRO demand outstrips local MRO capacity, what essential step could be taken to address the demand and supply gap, thereby reducing turnaround time and doing things close to the base? If you have any question, please send it in the Q&A feature. We will list all the questions anonymously. Let's get back here. I would like to proudly introduce the panelists. Mr. Pakon Ratanarod, Deputy Director, Office of PPP Contract Management, U-Tapao Airport and Eastern Aviation Development Project. Mr. Saran Benjanirat, Deputy Director General of the Civil Aviation Authority of Thailand. Mr. Christoph Clarence, Senior Vice President, Maintenance and Engineering of Bangkok Airways Public Company Limited, and Mr. Banyat Hasakun, Head of Engineering of Thai Air Asia Company Limited. And I will hand over this session to our lovely moderator, Mr. Amartya Day. Please join me in welcoming the panelists and our moderator.
Thank you, Nisha. And first of all, I would like to welcome all the panelists. We indeed have a very interesting lineup for today, which is composed of airlines, Civil Aviation Authority, and investment corridors. So it got to be interesting here. And we'll get a very comprehensive overview from different parts of the value chain. So the theme today is capturing the potential demand of MRO in Thailand, and how do we respond to that demand? Because we have been talking about that Thailand has a great demand for MRO. Airlines are increasing, departures are increasing, people will increase again, a rebound back post-pandemic. So there got to be enough market. But over the years, what are the key challenges that airlines, engineering departments within airlines or MROs have faced? At the same time, what are the best practices that they have come across? So we want to discuss all this and more. So firstly, thanks everyone for joining this panel today. And without further ado, I think I'll just start shooting you with my questions. So my first question would be to Christoph from Bangkok Airways. And Christoph, if you can tell us, we are all witnessing that we are moving, the world economy overall is easing out of the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. So how do you see the airline market ramping up in ASEAN, and when do you expect the commercial operations to come back to 2019 levels or even more? What's your opinion?
That's a very difficult question. I think my crystal ball may give me something that is very different from yours, and it's very difficult to say today who will be right, who will be wrong. I think for us, what we believe is that we will see the traffic coming back to 2019 figures no sooner than 2024, which is, I think, really the sooner we could see. Why is that? There are two main reasons. The first one is that it's very difficult to predict how this very interesting virus will evolve. I mean, 1 month ago we were all very optimistic, and then we got Omicron, and oh my God, now we are all stuck and we are really in a very difficult position again. The other very interesting thing to consider is that this virus has been having a very dire impact on the economies around the world. So I personally know quite a lot of people who are postponing trips because either they are concerned they may lose their job, or they lost their job already, or they want to save money because they see these current times as very difficult times. So I think realistically, 2024 would be a good year to see the 2019 figures back if everything goes well.
Thank you, Christoph. But we all have been doing very interesting things from working from home. People started all kind of things. But it would be interesting to understand, what did businesses do during this lockdown and slow economic activity? And did we also saw many companies preparing for the future. many of them have a plan for future, and that we will be stronger than ever before. And there would be a number of areas of investment and activity. So probably I'll put this question across to Khun Bania from AirAsia, that what was AirAsia doing while airline operations really slowed down during the pandemic, and did your airline take the downtime in flying to increase your MRO capabilities, or you had too much work to cater to, or and we are always talking about digital adoption or smart MRO. Is that a key area? Did you work on those areas, any of those?
Thank you for the question, and good afternoon all the audience, and thank you for inviting me to be the guest speaker. So I think I can tell another way around in terms of we are the engineering who do take care for aircraft 2 years for hibernation. When the demand comes, that we can see from the domestic first, so we can see something very ramp up, okay. Especially Thailand start to open border, okay, across the country now. Its job is come to me, okay. We need and real demand for bring aircraft into the active. One, this is some kind of heavy demand. So when we need aircraft back to the active, meaning that we have to send aircraft undergone for maintenance MRO, and seem to be we headache about the slot right now, because not only our industry that impact for the furlough staff and lack of manpower when demand coming up, MRO also as well, and also the same on other operator need aircraft to reactive again. So meaning that all the slot quite full and a lot of demand coming up. Not only the slot MRO that we confront with the problem, also about the logistics as well, in terms of component repair and a lot of things. Also to fly across the country, you know, it's very difficult because the virus COVID seem to be one we want to send our people over there. It's very difficult as well because it requires the state quarantine, something like that. Yeah.
Thank you, Khun Bania. What you mentioned is we were many a times very reactive. Yes, because the situation was unfolding every month. We had a number of waves of the infection, and every time the businesses and the people had to respond to that situation. But at the same time, we're also proactive in a few situations, and that does put a very good context to that. Now, what I would like to know is, probably my next question would be that for MRO operations, even pre-pandemic, we have always been talking about that aircraft and spares and critical areas. These are critical areas for MRO operations. So I would like to know, what's your opinion from Civil Aviation Authority, that what are the changes going ahead? What policies and tariffs that you have a little bit touched upon in terms of import process, and what is being done in order to make those operations more streamlined for existing businesses as well as future businesses?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the questions. Well, of course, we got a lot of comments from the MRO and also the OEM side as well, that, well, if they want to get raw materials or if they want to get spare parts, well, most of those things are stuck at the custom for quite some time. That is because, well, we haven't made a good arrangement with them in some case. So in this case, for CATS, we are going to talk with the customs in order to ensure that if we are dealing with those spare parts or raw materials, we might as well ask them to have some process or procedures in order to make those things available at the repair stations or perhaps to the people who need it. much faster. So for CAT, we know these problems, and we are going to arrange with the custom in order to resolve this problem. And yeah, we will do it very soon, because now we got this as a good, as big request from everyone. Yep.
Thank you, Khun So we have talked about what companies were reactive, companies were proactive. We are also looking at a certain timeline, 2024, 2025 probably. And Civil Aviation Authority has been supportive, so we are always thinking ahead, how can we streamline the operations in future? While today's context, we are talking about a particular location, which is the ATZ we have been talking about. So let me pose this question to Khun Pakon, that what are the key incentives or policies, mainly from a manpower point of view? Because yes, we need to streamline the customs, we need to have the infrastructure, but we need the real people behind the business, which is the manpower. So how is the ECO working with probably with CATC or with other agencies in getting the right manpower available at the right time? Khun Pakon, to you.
Okay, thank you, Matthias. So in terms of the education and human resource development, it's actually our primary concerns. Actually, Thailand is offering the high-skilled labor at a competitive cost comparing to another country in this region. I think this is my opinion. In terms of the human resource development, not only the incentive program that's provided by BOI, but the EOC also encouraged collaborations between various education organizations, including vocational school, university, and private company, to develop the education curriculum that meet their actual requirements and the international standards. Currently, actually, the EEC has two initiative projects which will help the private sector to develop human capital and skill. The first one is EEC Type A. This is to design for the university and vocational degree. It is a model of the collaborations with, between educational service, between educational institute and the industrial sector by work integrated learning, which is a combination of academic and work-related activity. The graduate from this program will be sufficient on the job trainings and they will be ready for work. The second one is EEC Type B. This is for the short course model. This is the budget sharing between government and private sector. This model is designed for upskill and reskill of the skilled labor to make sure that they will keep pace to changing of the new technology in the future. And expense of these two programs is tax deductible expense. This is, for that we can, for the incentive side. Back into the ATC area, as you can see in the previous slide earlier, it's about the CATC. EEC office also collaborate with the CATC, which is Thailand Civil Aviation Training Center, to set up the training center, which is, Aeronautical Engineer Training Center, which is will provide high-skilled technicians and demand-driven education concept to support the MRO business and plan to provide a shared training facility in the area for the collaborations between curriculum between CATC and private sector as well. That's all about the HR for EEC. Thank you, Amartya.
Thank you, Khun Pakon. Very well-rounded answer, very comprehensive, that you're talking about the job trainings. You did talk about the two programs, Type A and Type B, and also upskilling and reskilling, and CATC providing as per the demand in the area. So many a times we think, yes, there are lots of universities, there are vocational training colleges, but then while they are doing their courses and programs, they will do their job training elsewhere, and maybe they'll come to me after 4 years. It's too late for me to train them. So having something in the area is definitely going to help, and they can really get skilled while doing their trainings at the hangars with airlines and with MROs. That's definitely very innovative. So we are talking about all the ecosystem enablers. Let me get back to you, Christoph, and I want to pick your brains a little bit about Bangkok Airways. I've worked in Thailand with Thai clients last 7-8 years, so I've known Bangkok Airways. Very rich staff in terms of knowledge, experience, technical capabilities. We also worked with many agencies in Thailand. So in terms of MRO operations, how has Bangkok Airways really ramped up over the time? What was the core portfolio of services in the past? And as a company, what is the direction for MRO ops and new services?
Okay, that's a wide question. Thank you for it. Well, as you said, we have quite a broad experience in maintenance. We have been maintaining our own fleet cars for nearly 30 years. And for our fleet of Airbus aircraft, we are nearing 20 years now. We have been really growing our capabilities on a step-by-step approach. We started with the simplest checks and the simplest components, and we have been growing slowly and steadily as needed. So we started by doing 1C, 2C, and we went really up to the point where we are doing all the checks, whatever the simplest ones or the heaviest one on both families of aircraft. And I think when we will resume offering our services to third parties, this is really our starting point. We will start by offering services on types we operate and with the full capability list that we have today. After, what we intend doing going further is to develop our capabilities on the component repairs. We believe that if we want to attract airlines, operators, or lessors to send us their aircraft, we need to be able to provide them with a full scope of services, except for maybe major components or very expensive computers that would require a very high investments in terms of test benches or things like this. And anyway, we have the capabilities elsewhere in the region. So I think first step, we offer everything we have already, which is quite extensive. Second step, we would build up the component repair capabilities, mostly with hydromechanical components to start with, composite repairs, things like this. And then we need to think a little bit beyond what do they really need, and it's difficult to find in this part of the world. One thought is maybe that it's very difficult to get your aircraft painted in this part of the world. You have very few MROs that have a good capability to do that. So that is one possibility for us to expand further. And the other one is maybe to think a little bit outside the box and think about the context of today and what we have been seeing with plenty of aircraft being retired. And this is something I believe is not covered in the region very well. So I think we would begin to exploring the possibility to offer things like part out services, spare distributions, things like that, which again, we have been talking to quite a few lessors of aircraft owners, and they have to fly the aircraft quite far away to get this kind of services. So that's really our thought process. We want to go step by step and to go in a sustainable way, as I just tried to explain now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Christoph. So you did mention about the inspections and the checks, C-checks, and also moving to components, hydromechanical, and also in future, also composite repairs. And you're open to also look into new niche categories, which is like aircraft tear down and part outs. That's very interesting because there are very few facilities. I believe one is here down under, but it's more of an aircraft storage. And then there are a few in Europe, I suppose. And yeah, the market is just going to grow. So definitely there is potential for that. Quite agree. Thanks for that, Christoph. Probably I'll jump to what we have always been talking to airlines, and we are seeing, and they have been telling that there is there is limited third-party heavy maintenance in Thailand. So this question is to Khun Banya from AirAsia, and I want to know about that. While there is limited capability, do you believe that local airline companies can be serviced by locally operated third-party MRO providers in future? What is your take on that?
Thank you. I would like to throw back on about when we start in Thailand 80 years ago. Okay, as you may know, Asia is a low-cost carrier. We do on our core business only move passenger from one to another destination. That's our first model. Until today, I not realize that I have very big fleet up, and also our group AirAsia is more than 200. Now along the year, once we do something like a manage for the maintenance, undergo for hangar check, we also have fight the slot each other because it's not never enough, especially in Thailand. We don't have MRO that can help and support us. I have to send out of the country and manage the slot. Like this month, December, I have to talk with the MRO outside to manage the slot together. Otherwise, I cannot manage our fleet to operate, to cope the demand on our marketing, something like that. This is really headache, and I really need to have the MRO in Thailand. And one more thing that you may overlook about the ferry cost, that is the cost that burden to the airline. And this one is not the MRO, any MRO can afford it. This is almost 18 years that I confess this problem, especially this year that we're gonna have to bring aircraft back into service after having more than headache. So if EEC can make it happen, we have the MRO in Thailand, it's gonna be help domestic operator. I believe I can talk on behalf of domestic operator, all the same problem right now. Yeah.
So there you go. There's a huge demand coming from AirAsia. So investors, MRO companies already listening to it. There's a huge fleet out there, and of course from other airlines as well. And mostly, I believe A320 aircraft family from AirAsia, the newer versions probably as well. And that's a huge market. And ferrying those aircraft, especially coming out of storage and hibernation, is an additional cost. It's an additional cost for full service airlines or low cost, doesn't matter. It's still a huge cost. And getting it done in overseas. And then we are also, the moment we are talking about overseas, we are also talking about those MROs having the required certification, right? And that is something, let me touch upon with Khun Sarang from Civil Aviation Authority, that you mentioned on your slide, one of the areas was mutual acceptance of standards from foreign licensed aircraft maintenance organizations. So when our aircraft is going from Thailand to Malaysia or Singapore or Philippines, and they are having the requisites, so for the same MRO, so what about local MROs, and how can they benefit from this mutual acceptance of standards between respective civil aviation authorities? If you can throw some light on that.
Well, let's say it this way. If we are opening the MRO in Thailand at the moment, and we would like to repair some part for the aircraft from the US, what happens is that we need the MRO supposed to get the approval by the FAA. And because at the moment we don't have any recognitions between Thailand and the US, so that FAA have to come to Thailand to approve it, to approve the repair station and grant the license. Oh, sorry, the not the license. Sorry, the certificate to the repair stations. Well, and during the work, if the repair station want to do anything, for example, if they want to repair something that beyond the manuals, they have to go back to FAA or EASA. And with that, it is quite a hassle. So if in the future, in the near future, if we can have the bilateral agreements, which means Thailand, FAA, EASA, we recognize what Thailand is doing. In this case, well, they accept our standard. In this case, if the repair station want to do something, they can come to CAT instead of going back to FAA or EASA. And if it is the case, then things will get much easier. And the other thing is that we can also do some oversight on the repair stations. And after that, the result of the oversight might be able to be accepted by those other authorities. And it will help a lot of MRO or other, let's say OEM as well, in order to prepare for the audit by other authorities. They might come from time to time, of course, but this will be reduced drastically. So that will help a lot on both MRO and OEM. So we are working on this one, and perhaps the first one that we start talking with is the Singapore, so CAS, and we hope that in the near future means perhaps in the next 2 or 3 years, we might achieve this goal. And after that, we will start talking with others like EASA and FAA in the near future. Yep, that's the plan we have at the moment.
Thank you, Kunsaran. Thanks a lot. Yeah, mutual recognition that will really help cut down the cost and also having to go to multiple organizations for their approvals. Let me little bit go back in terms of, we just now spoke to you, Kunbanian, on having a huge fleet, AirAsia, and of course, you need to go out and about, do some shopping, look for the right one, and sometimes even though you have a need, there is not enough demand. But we recently also encountered, I believe last year, early this year as well, of Asia Digital Engineering in Malaysia, and that's under the AirAsia group, and that will set up new MRO operations. So with that as one of the entities, you see that there is still enough demand and in ASEAN, and or can you throw a little bit light on what will be the future capabilities of Asia Digital Engineering, and how's your relation with Airbus subsidiary, because that also earlier belonged to partially to AirAsia. Tell us a little bit about the dynamics.
Okay, thank you for this really good question. Actually, even we have our group to do something on our setup MRO, we call ADE. So, but I can see it still have the plenty demand in terms of our group and our future expansion. Even today, we like resizing our fleet, but definitely we don't stop. And Asia, we not only the airline right now, we expand and diversify. ADE is one of our business unit. And what I can see is still have plenty demand, because ADE, when we start, like Kun Christoph said, it need to be a learning curve step by step. We do only the lower C1, C2 check. Other than that, we need time and we need to gain experience also. And I can see from the demand over next year, we still need other MRO. And also at the same time, we also have the return fleet to the lessor. This really need a special for return aircraft delivery back to the lessor. Normally, I see on our existing MRO have to park our aircraft into the hangar more than as normal, more than as our routine check. This is actually it's block us to send our normal routine operation, meaning that we still need. For the SAE in Malay as run by the Airbus, Actually, there is very good partner with us. Without them, we cannot far until today. Okay, because they very expertise in terms of special maintenance need like a structure repair or special modification that we need something next to door to help us. And anyway, I believe that if we can focus for the SAE in the future, we will hand over all the return aircraft to the lessor 6 year, 12 year to the SAE because they already have the EASA certification. And ADE, this is one of things that we need to have the EASA approval in order to do the 6 year, 12 year per the lessor agreement with us and delivery aircraft back to the lessor. It takes quite some time.
All right. So that's a definite roadmap, as we can see, that you have to not only work with Asia Digital Engineering, but there is enough demand in the market. Yeah. And AirAsia has enough fleet to be serviced in Thailand as well. So I'll go back to probably Christoph. You did mention about niche capabilities in aircraft tear down and part outs. So do you think niche capabilities is the way to go for probable investments? And what kind of aircraft would you look, as in some phasing out old generation, or would you look for some aircraft modification? We see a lot of modifications going on, PTF and all. What would be the right way? What would be your advice for new MRO companies?
Well, thank you for the question. I don't know if it's the way to go, but I think it's one way to go. I think basically, if you start as an MRO today, if I may say, you are late to the party, right? Because if you look around in the region, you have a lot of competitors that are already well established. You mentioned Sepang Aerospace. There are, of course, ST Aero, SIAEC. You have Lufthansa in the Philippines, GMF in Indonesia. You have many that have been around for quite some time. They are established players. They do have some customers already in their portfolio. So if you are a newcomer, you need to bring something to the table that maybe the others don't offer. And I think Kunbanya was making a very interesting point that you have the day-to-day checks, if I may say, like normal sheet checks, things like this. And then you have some very special occasions like aircraft with deliveries that are much more complex, takes much more time, have some specific requests as far as modifications are concerned. Very often you need to do a change of LOPA, as I mentioned earlier, or it's N5 and you will have to do a part out. So I think if you come to the party late, you need to be able to compete with the others in the very important criteria that the operators or the lessor choose to select you. And they are, of course, the price, the quality of the job, and the capability to do the standard job, right? If you have to do a 6-year or 12-year, you need to demonstrate that you can do the job in a timely manner with the proper quality and with a competitive price. But if at the same time you are capable to show to the lessor or to the lessee that, yeah, under your lease agreement, you need to repaint the aircraft to the livery of the new lessee, and we can do this here, so the lessor or the current lessee doesn't need to have one more ferry flight to bring the aircraft somewhere else, and then bring it to do the check with the additional headache of combining 2 slots, things like this. If you have the possibility to offer the complete package, then I think you have a much better chance of bringing in more customers and bringing them in, maybe not for the standard C checks, but more for the end of these 6-year, 12-year, the complex checks, where if you add something to your capability, you will be clearly in a good position to compete. So the way to compete, no, but for me, it's one way that deserves to be explored and really deserved a very careful analysis as to which service really makes sense and which one does not. So yeah, for us, we will look at it clearly.
Thank you, Christoph. That does open some new gates in Asia. And we have been witnessing that there are so many aircraft which will go out of service due to pandemic. Some of those timelines have been squeezed and they are back in the hangars and they are going for long-term storage, hibernation, but then the lessor has to sell it off, part out, or give it to another airline. So inevitably, even though airlines and lessor may not need it, right, they need it sooner or later, and that may be quite close. So we talked about niche segments, we talked about certain policies, we talked about some smart MRO and digital adoption. Let me go back to Kunpakon on, so what do we have? What do we have, Kunpakon, in ATZ, in ECO? What is the business model and what great infrastructure facilities are on offer for grabs? Over to you.
Okay. So thank you for the questions. It's actually not only our 20 year of national strategic plan that Thailand aims to be positions of the regional aviation hub and establish center of the MRO. But as I heard from both airlines, Bangkok Airways and Thai Air Asia, that they also have the pain point about the facility long time ago, because both of the airports, Bangkok Airport and Suvarnabhumi and Don Mueang Airport, also not enough the facility or the land that can be located as a MRO. So that's why we saw the gap of the for the future as well. And of course, a lot of the aircraft in Thailand, also a lot of them go outside to do the heavy maintenance, as Khun Banyat said. That is another issue that we look at that. And then we try to adapt into the U-Tapao as well, that we make sure that U-Tapao are friendly enough to airport, to the airline, to the airport operator, to the everyone. So once Thailand, as I said, we want to aim to be aviation hubs and the center of MRO. We are heavily invest in many infrastructure projects, including hundreds of miles of the railway, road, seaport, logistic park, industrial estates, and we announce a lot of promoted zones in order to make sure that the U-Tapao airport will be a heart of the Allotopolis. We connect everything to make sure that the U-Tapao airport will be everything and connect everyone into the Allotopolis. And of course, come back to the ATZ. This is located right next to the airport and also right next to the runway. It is because to support the MRO activity and to ensure that the quick turnaround time of the airline when they used to come to service in these airports. And of course, when it's very quick for turnaround time, the maximum of the utilizations of the aircraft, enhancing of the efficiency of the airline operations will be coming as well. This is one of we try to fix the pain point of the airline as well. When we have everything in there, complete ecosystem of the MRO in the airport, rather than on the passings of the airport. And a dedicated apron in the ATC, it's also a major facility, which is allowed to access very quick to the runway. This is one of the major facility as well. In the aprons, it's also have a aircraft stand, which is around 5 code F, 17 code E, and 44 code C equivalent. And another facility such as swing compass, aircraft washing area, utility, electricity, water supply, wastewater treatment, the aviation field, common parking, and of course the training center, which is able to share the facility for training for everyone for the MRO company, which is reduce their cost as well. And come back to the backfield or earthwork in the ATs, as you can see in the earlier presentations from the Khun Dasani, that its earthwork is ongoing very well. The backfield level will be the same as the apron level. It will be ready for the future construction for all the MRO company in the future. And the last one, not only the facility that we provide to support MRO, but another thing is the ATC will, in the future, It will surrounding by the commercial area, residential area, and the closest one is Airport City, which is developed by UTA. This is to enhance work and life balance as well. As you know that in the future, work-life balance and being livable area, this is the one key consideration to attract the new generation of workforce, not only the training center that we provide, but in this area, we try to make a livable area in order to make sure that everyone will happy when stay here. That's all for me. Thank you, Kun Amatia.
Thank you, Kun Pakon. That's indeed very comprehensive that we are talking about live, work, and play. And we do have to consider all the components of a healthy ecosystem. We are very close to the end of the hour, and I would like to take some questions that have been posted. So I just go through the questions and probably pose it to one of the panelists. So one of the questions from the audience is for AirAsia, and do you think any of the factors such as lack of skilled manpower, language barriers, little bit complicated processes in Thailand, or the regulatory regime, has it created any hurdles for you for investments in Thailand? And what would be your learnings to AirAsia Group for bringing MRO investments in Thailand? How would you put it together, Kun Bania?
Okay, thank you. I honest with you that I always work with the CATC before, and I see then they have the something talking about our allied staff. They work around over the world in the Middle East, and I heard they only compliment to us very good workmanship. And in this era, I believe no more barrier on English language anymore for our Thai education right now. It seems to be they can talk better than whatever we worry about that one. Okay, and our lady hand workmanship, I believe Thailand is the more that I always heard it, and also my people, as I know it because I run on the group of 5 countries. So everybody give us complimentary. What we lack on is about the licensing system, certification system that is not clear enough in terms of the past. But right now I can give the credit to the CAT. Right now they start to do the approved training organization. That is beyond in track right now, and it gonna be our standard to talk among each other when we talking about our license system in Thailand. Previously is really confusion. Okay, right now seem to be contact, but I think I can say halfway because we need more to go in order to meet all the standard. For in terms of the airline side, right now ATO is required on the job training that help us. They tailor-made and work when they educate. This is gonna be matched on what the operator sector need manpower to do the job right away. Rather than we have our own internal again to train them and spend about 6 months or more than that, and also damage to our aircraft. That is very funny thing. It can be maintenance error. This is, I think, is very good sign. And as EC prepare everything, not just only the MRO. They prepare about the training school, prepare all the whole ecosystem. That I believe that is going to be help us a lot in terms of the MRO setup in Thailand. Yeah.
Thank you, Kun Bania, on putting an answer very comprehensively. That we are looking at skilled manpower, which is already there, and language barrier is no more an issue. And there was a bit of issues on regulatory sides, but that has been taken in good state and it is being worked upon. So it's really a good development. I have another question. Probably I'll put it to Khun Saran of Civil Aviation Authority. And this is in terms of investors who are still a bit worried about foreign ownership of MRO companies in Thailand, as well as bringing enough staff. Is there upper cap or quota for non-Thai origin staff for the first few years? And what about senior management being from non-Thai? So again, manpower related, but more from regulatory and policy standpoint. If Khun Saran, you can throw some light on that.
Thank you very much for these questions. It is the question that always be asked to CAC. So it's a good chance to discuss about this. Very honest, Thailand is not the owner of the tech, of course, and we know that. So of course, in the first few years, let's say not first few years, let's say first 5 years, we know about this so that we allow the operators to have senior management from overseas to be able to manage the company. But after 5 years, we politely ask everyone to ensure that the technology, the necessary technology is supposed to be transferred to local people. So this is something that we want to ensure that everything that the process is going to sustain. Let's say if we have a company in Thailand, of course, the best way is to have people in Thailand to also participate in the company too. And that is the reason why we want the technology transfer to happen. About the ownership, we also know about this issue for quite some time, so that we work on the Air Navigation Act to fix this. At the moment, most of the repair stations type, we have to type the first type, sorry, we have 3 types. The first type is for the big aircraft to repair the whole aircraft. Now, if you are invest in EEC, the ownership can be 100% owned by the foreigners. And for type 2, which is for critical parts, now it is also able to owned by foreigner 100% as well. Same things go to type 3. But for type 1, for the whole aircraft, for repair the whole aircraft, we also have some limitations in the sense that first, again, we emphasize that technology transfer is supposed to happen. It can be in terms of having more Thai staff in the company in the let's say within 5. Second is they may also talk with the university or kind of training organization to have a kind of arrangement to transfer the technology into Thailand. So that this is the things that we have set up in terms of the regulations for an MRO. That's pretty much that we set it up for you. And you might
thank you.
Pakorn, for East, they also have something that is even on this.
Thank you. Thank you, Khun Saran. I think we are very much at the end of today's session, and it was very interesting. Let me just quickly recap the main things that were discussed. And yes, all of us are anticipating a quicker return, but then there are concerns on the business. But more or less, we all think that yes, 2024, 2025 is a timeline when we will achieve 2019 levels. But right now, many of the airlines have been reactive. They are also being proactive. And the domestic markets have opened up. The regional ASEAN markets have also opened up. And that's something very interesting, that businesses are being more resilient and they're working towards it. Another area that we discussed shortly was on the processes being streamlined between Customs and Civil Aviation Authority of Thailand, and that will really promote the MRO business in terms of for materials and consumables and aircraft parts and equipment, moving across borders. We also talked about the vocational institutions, the university, and ECO is actually encouraging two projects, Type A and Type B. That is definitely something to look into. CATC putting up a great facility by 2027, 2028. So you have people right on the ground next to your hangar, next to your developments. And from MRO perspective, which is Bangkok Airways, AirAsia, or other airline engineering departments, we are going to take small steps, but definitive steps. And they are going to increase their MRO capability over the years. And they always have been facing high ferry cost. And there is no third-party MRO in Thailand. So definitely there's a huge market to cater to. Lastly, we also looked at some niche jobs, such as livery jobs, aircraft wash, composite repairs, or there could be part outs. So these are a couple of things what we talked about. And Thai workmanship has received compliments regionally and globally. And certifications, licensing, they are getting back on track. Great work by Khun Saran and team and Civil Aviation Authority. They have 7 to 8 different initiatives, and we hope all this will attract the investments. And last but not the least, very interesting comment by Christoph earlier, that if you come to the party late, you better bring something interesting. So yes, there are many niche areas in MROs that should be looked into, that can be explored. And that is something the airlines, MROs, civil aviation authorities, they have to collectively work towards it. And we won't even discount that the heavy amount of digital adoption in MRO, and that has we as a consulting organization and all the experience that comes from working with airlines, MROs, aerospace park, and aerotropolis projects is due to the lockdown, the effects of the pandemic, the digitization has really increased in all businesses. The way we are delivering projects, the way we are interacting with each other, and at the same time, the way we are going about our day-to-day businesses. So we are already hearing about visual inspections being done by drones in Singapore and in many other countries. And digital adoption in MRO has increased many folds. Many businesses are increasing their digital budgets. They're talking about wearables. They're talking about smart MRO center. They're also talking about robots that can support in daily tasks. Then there are automated ground vehicles which can move large sections of the cabin from the one part of the hangar to another. And also many of the repetitive, what we call dirty and dangerous jobs, that can be done by robots and cobots. And more use of digital dashboards where the management and the staff on the line, they both can see. And there is a lot of virtual support from mentors, digital mentors who can, the technician can get live help in an MRO environment from another expert in another country. So all these changes are happening. They are changes that sometimes businesses are being reactive, but we also see there is a lot of bigger enthusiasm in bringing third-party MRO investments in ECO in Thailand, and also bringing the Thailand 4.0, Industry 4.0 digital adoption in MRO. And we possibly need to see what are the next developments in Thailand in the next 6 to 12 months' time. So a lot of interesting thoughts, I think, were discussed today, the presentations that were given, and really thankful to our esteemed panelists, Khun Saran from Civil Aviation Authority. Thank you, sir, for educating us on the various policies, regulatory reforms. Christoph, many thanks to you. Great ideas, and really geared up to see what Bangkok Airways is going to do in the next few years in MRO arena. Khun Bania, you have all the fleet, so everybody is looking at you in terms of getting the aircraft serviced. That's a great fleet, and we all hope for resilience and quick turnaround and come back for the airline operations to full-fledged levels. And thank you, Khun Pakon, last but not the least, in putting this entire project at U-Tapao Airport and ATZ and ECO and other agencies working together towards it. So thanks, everyone. And some of the questions we could not answer right now, but all those questions will go to ECO office, and we will make an attempt to answer all those through emails. Thank you so much, and back to Khun Nisha.
Thank you to our moderator, Mr. Amartya Day, and all the panelists, Mr. Pakon Ratanarod, Mr. Saran Benjanirat, Mr. Christoph Karen, and Mr. Banyat Hansakun. Thank you so much. It was a fruitful panel discussion, and all the sharing today will be beneficial towards the growth of the business and the industry. Thank you so much, all the audience, for your participation. This event will be a part of the steps we take toward a better aviation ecosystem in our country, Thailand. For all the materials, as Mr. Amartya said, we are sending them along with the link to the feedback evaluation form into your mailbox right after. Please click on that link and tell us how do you think about today's webinar. It would be very much appreciated and helpful for our next step. We will summarize the Q&A information, including the rest question, and send it to you all afterward. It comes to an end of the webinar. I'd like to sign off here. Thank you and see you next time.